All right, so I'm going to read some of the most provocative chapters I found in The Way of a Superior Man with my girlfriend and see how she reacts to it. Introduce yourself for all the people.
Sure. Hello, my name is Maggie, and I'm Abraham's girlfriend.
For the context of this video and many other things.
Yeah.
Actually, let me give you a quick story as to how this came about before we dive into it. So about a year ago, we were staying at a friend of ours called Mike Chang. Some of you guys might know him from Six Pack Shortcuts back in the day. I'll throw something on the screen. And we were actually living in his house, in his actual room, weirdly enough. So if any of you guys who know, he was like the OG fitness YouTuber, right? Like this big, strong, masculine man. So one day I was just looking at his bookshelf and I was like, what does Mike Chang read, right? Because I want to know what this guy's reading. And one of the books that stood out on the shelf was The Way of the Superior Man. And so I started reading it. I'd already knew about it and read it before, but it was years ago. I started rereading it. And then Maggie came into the room. And I remember feeling a bit like, oh no, like maybe she shouldn't see this. And then I was like, no, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going to read some of this to her and just see what she genuinely thinks. It was a really good time. We actually recorded it for a YouTube video, but it got deleted somehow. So we're going to record a couple chapters from it today and see, just have a chat about it. Without further ado, first one we'll go into this is one of the first chapters. A man's purpose comes before his relationship. And there's another chapter called She Doesn't Really Want to Be Number One. What do you think about this?
So by just looking at that, I feel like a lot of people would be like right away, like, what? No way. Relationship comes first before everything else, before work, before, other relationships. And I actually agree with it so much because especially for us, I know that when we're not in our purpose, we're not showing up for each other in our relationship. Like when we're not feeling like we are working towards something, or that, we're a little disappointed in ourselves with our work, then we show up like less authentically. Maybe authentic isn't the right word, but we show up less like in our truest essence together.
Yeah. I think like a big part of it as well is as men, you spend so much time on your mission and your purpose and building yourself, but then once you get into a relationship, that energy that you're putting into yourself can then go into the relationship, because honestly, like, part of you does want that, right? Does want to be, there is that like part of you that wants the attention to be put first, right? So it can sometimes be confusing for men because you might be being told like, we want to spend all this time together and have this quantity, but it can take away from your purpose, right? And I made another video about this, like how masculine men act in relationships. Like this happened to me, and this happened to us recently, kind of. Right, where I'd fallen a little bit away from doing the things that were important to me, like, going to the gym, health, fitness, business, which is all down to me, by the way, nothing down to you. And it made the like natural masculine and feminine dynamics of the relationship like come out of balance for a little while, right? So I think I remember when we started talking about this initially, and the way I put it to us is like, if we're going to build a family together, if we're going to, be together for the long term, then I'm putting that mission and purpose. It's like a sacrifice for us, right? It's not, and for you guys, like if you're looking for, to have a healthy relationship with a feminine woman, you can put it that way, right? And help her to understand it's actually in her benefit, not just yours. And so she can see that you are both working towards a common goal. I think since we've had that, it's just made us like, I feel way more supported by you. And when you're working on your stuff as well, I feel like I can support you more as well, right? It's like a balance.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. There's times where he's like working super late. And there's maybe a little bit less time for spending time together. And I always think back to when he said, like, I'm not just working on this for myself, I'm working on my business for us and for our future family. And then I'm able to be like, okay, like I can, sacrifice a little time and we can make up for it tomorrow. And because I think a lot of women who are dating entrepreneurial men, they forget that part and can sometimes just be like, well, we haven't spent this time together, or, you know, he loves his work more than me. And it's not really that. I can't say that for everyone, but it's not really that. It's that this passion and this purpose and this career, like, sometimes has to come first so that they can, like, feel, I think this is really important too, that they are, you know, really providing in a financial means. And that is like huge aspect for, I think like confidence and masculinity as well.
Anything else on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter number 2. 90% of a woman's emotional problems stem from feeling unloved. So don't stand back and analyze her. Give her your love. Next time she's in a bad mood, try this. Assume she's not feeling loved.
Yeah. I think at first, I think men a lot of times will try to solve the problems because you guys are very like action oriented, which is amazing and wonderful. But as women, I can say probably most of the time that we come to you with either emotional problems or even logistical problems, we really just want you to resonate with us and empathize with us a little bit and just like make us feel supported and loved instead of being like, okay, well, I can figure this out for you. You know, you just need to do this and say this. And like in that moment, we might not be ready to hear that. And what we really need is for you to just like hold us and be like, it's okay. I got you. We're going to figure this out together. And you're right for feeling that way. Like, don't ever tell a woman that, you know, she isn't allowed to feel a certain emotion or, you know, is wrong to feel a certain thing, even if she's being drama. Because that'll make her more drama.
Yeah, I think it's just understanding that the primary communication of men is more like logical, and for women it's more emotionally led. And one isn't better or worse, right? They both work together. And it's also worth remembering that as a man, we're wired to want to just fix things and make things better and just improve things, right? That is a natural instinct. So don't feel necessarily bad if you are like that. That's just how men are wired. But it's just understanding that that's not usually what, you know, the woman might need in that moment. It's usually just coming more from literally just shutting up and just being there. Like, that will already get you like 70% of the way. Pretty much, right? Because you know, just listening, really. But then there is also a time to be able to just like be there and show up and fix things, right? Like the other day, like your bike broke, right? And just messaged me being like, hey, like my bike's broken. Can you like get it fixed, right? And that's more of a clear moment where it's like, okay, no, this is actually to solve something. And you've got to also be able to, you know, fix things in that moment and show up as a man, right? Because that is part of your job. So it is a balance. You don't want to go too far into just being there to emotional support, because then you're becoming almost like too feminine. You still like need the man to lead. It's like when we're currently in this beautiful like mountain in Bali. We went dolphin swimming yesterday for our anniversary. And on the way up here, I don't know why we didn't think of this, but it was like 11 p.m. at night. And we're at the top of the mountain, and it was absolutely freezing. And I'm wearing what I'm wearing right now, shorts, a t-shirt and flip-flops, going through basically, I don't even know what the temperature was, but it was freezing, literally freezing, right? I had one, like basically jacket. And so like in that moment, it's like, how do you act as a man, right? Do you take the jacket for yourself because you're cold, or do you give it to your woman, right? And the answer is obvious, right? Being able to show up as a man in those moments as well, right? So it's like it's a balance at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't necessarily need him to be emotional with me. I just need him to hold me in my emotions and allow me to be emotional. And then like, yeah, it's also wonderful to have you be like this masculine like structure in our relationship where you're like, I can step in and help with things that I can't do or don't want to do.
Yeah, and part of it as well is like, if you're in a relationship, for the woman is like being okay with allowing you to do certain things, right, as the man. Because at the same side where there's a lot of feminine men, there's also a lot of masculine women, right? So part of it is just allowing yourself to receive help and actually realizing like that's a good thing. it's always just like this back and forward dance. But what I would say is, as the man watching this, like, you should be the one to lead. Like, you should be the one to initiate these things if you want these kind of relationship dynamics to play out. I would say it is your job to. All right, last chapter. We've got one more for you guys before we sign off. We forgot about this. So we'll play. Well, actually, first of all, play a quick video up on the screen of how you can emotionally support a woman. And like this basically represents us when Maggie's needs emotional support. This is what we'll do. Okay, Bernie.
Sometimes the woman just needs to be held and allowed to be emotional and a little helpless bird sometimes.
Yes, without judgment for that. Okay. We're going on a freaking journey with these chapters. All right, chapter 3, or no, third point, this is in chapter 3. She wants the killer in you, right? So this is like the complete opposite to what we just spoke about. But I think it's quite good because it shows both ends of the spectrum. She wants the killer in you. Let me talk about that.
Yeah, I think I've changed my mind about this, because at first I was like, no, I don't want my man to be like too harsh or like too intense. But yeah, ever since Ibrahim has been like really just like in the gym, really dedicated. I think killer might not be the right word, but I think women really crave to feel safe and that they can like rely on their man to protect them in any situation. And we've actually gone through a situation that was like, could have been a little iffy in Italy at one point, and just
let me tell that story real quick. So we were this was summer, European summer. We were in Naples, Italy, because we were planning to go to like the Amalfi Coast and do that whole thing. So Naples was the nearest city. I'd never been to Naples before. Neither had you. And it's quite a dirty city, to be honest. Like, it's busy, it's a bit run down, there's like a lot of homeless people. And one night we couldn't find anywhere to park. Like, literally, we were driving around for like 30 minutes, an hour realistically, trying to find where to park. And there was this one spot that was literally like the same width as the car. So there was a car in front of it, then there was this old abandoned bike that had like no wheel, it was busted up, had a chain on it. So obviously like no one was using that bike, it was like abandoned. So I was like, fuck it, let me just pull this bike and like physically move it back so we can fit in. It takes us probably 20 minutes to get into the spot. And just as I finally got in, Maggie was reversing, I was moving the bike in the car. Just as we finally got in, this guy who's like kind of old, like rough face, comes up to us, can't speak any English, he's Italian, but he's saying like, you broke my bike, and he's pointing to the bike where it's just completely busted up and saying, we did that. And obviously this is nighttime, I'm not in the best mood at this point, to be honest. I was like, no, we didn't. And then he's basically saying, I'm going to call the police. Oh, he's pointing to the rental car. I have a whole other story about this rental car friggin' company scamming us. So we didn't want him to call this rental car company because we knew that they would just basically just like take money from us because they were a legit scam. Anyway, fast forward, like it heats up a little bit and this homeless guy pulls on the door to where Maggie's in the side of the car. She's like on the opposite side of the road where I'm standing having this argument with this homeless guy. He's trying to like get the wallet from the car. So he wants money, right? And that was when it flipped for me, and I like shut the door closed and I shouted at him to get away. And then what happened is he put his hand in his pocket, and now his pocket was just below like the window level of the car. So Maggie actually didn't see this happen, thankfully, but I saw him and I just went silent. I was looking down at his hand in his pocket, waiting to see what he's doing. And then he pulled out a knife on me. So in this moment, it's like, everything's kind of slowed down. And in my mind, I was like, okay, there's 3 options here. I punch this guy in the face and he gets knocked out. That's like one of the best case scenarios. But I'm in Italy, I'm a foreigner. I could easily go to prison for this. Maybe he knocks his head on the floor and dies. Like, you just don't know. I could punch him and he doesn't get knocked out, and then he stabs me, and then maybe hurts Maggie. It's different when you're with like your girlfriend as well, because you can't just think about yourself, what you would do. You have to think about like the second consequence, right? So I was like, okay. Or I tell Maggie to drive off, which was actually like the first thing I wanted to do. But I couldn't really it's difficult to like communicate that to her because she's in the car. And then what actually happened was I like just calmly told him, wait. So I got like, what, 20 euros out of my wallet or something. And I like literally like a dog with a bone, I like walked him down the road with this like, it was like 20 euros and gave it to him at the end of the road. Got into the back of the car, and I'm like fucking like deep breathing at this point because I'm like, shit, like, you're like, this is gonna stab me, like, what's gonna happen? And Maggie, we sort of drive off, and Maggie's just like laughing at the situation, and she's like, that was a bit crazy. And I'm like, and then I remember being like, no, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, nothing, literally just got stabbed. And then I remember saying to you, like, I was trying to tell you to drive off, and I remember her saying, like, if you told me what was happening, I would have ran this guy over. And that was when like the Midwestern came out of town. But anyway, all of that to say, right, in that situation, it's really easy to let like your adrenaline and your emotions overcome you. But because I've like trained a lot of, just self-defense martial arts, been in some similar situations before, I know that the best answer is always to just remove yourself as calmly from the situation as possible. That's always going to be the best way to go, right? But if you're not used to being in those situations, you can just act out of emotion. Maybe you do try and hit him and you don't even know how to punch, and so you don't do anything, and then he just stabs you. Like, that can easily happen, right? Or you act out of ego. You feel my ego getting involved and being like, fuck this guy, like, who do you think he is? I'll just hit. Like, it was all these things, right, that you have to be able to move through as a man. And you can only really do that through practice and through actually preparing yourself. It doesn't just happen. You have to build yourself up to prepare yourself. And yeah, thankfully, everything was okay, right? Why are we talking about that? I can't remember.
Because the woman was
the killer. The killer, yeah.
And yeah, I think it's like we want to have that, like, just safety, like knowledge of safety, that if something like that were to happen, our man would be able to handle it and wouldn't get us into more trouble or get us hurt, and would either be able to, like, defend us or be able to defuse the situation, which he did. So yeah, I think it is really important. And just like having the knowledge that like he, trains in the gym and does the martial arts and all the things, like, just gives me a sense of like peace in like most situations.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things where you never want to have to use it, but you always want it to be there just in case, like in a situation, right? And yeah, ideally you never have to use it, because what also can happen is, like, as you start doing these things, you can get egotistical about it, and you can almost like look for situations. Like when I was younger, like for my teens, I remember like thinking I was like the big man, and like was like, oh, like, is this guy looking at me in the wrong way? Because I think I'm like some big shot because I've like punched a bag for two days. And a lot of men do that. And that's actually fucking worse, because then you're actually, particularly if you're with your girlfriend, you're actually then putting yourself and her in more danger because you're a fucking idiot. Right? So
not that I've experienced that as well in a relationship, and that makes me feel unsafe.
Yeah. It's like some like Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi shit, like wax on, wax off, right? You do all the preparation, and like, ideally you never have to use it. And also like other men can just sort of tell when you could hold yourself, because you're just, I was actually like relatively calm in that situation we spoke about. Like it was like, obviously if I didn't tell you the guy had a knife, like you would have even known. It was only after that I told you, right? And that's like honestly the best outcome that you can have, because it shows that things are able to remain calm. But you can only do that with you have to go through the experience of being punched in the face, so you know what that is like to then be able to navigate out of a situation like that. But yeah, those were the 3 chapters. If you want a part 2, comment below part 2, and maybe I'll convince her to come back on, because she gets a little nervous sometimes coming on. And I have to pull her leg just for you guys. Making you great. Thank you. Any final thoughts or closings?
No, I'm just grateful.
Grateful. Peace.